Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, I'm going to be following up on my previous videos regarding retcons with the biggest retcon Dragon Ball Z and the biggest retcon Dragon Ball Super, by talking about the biggest retcon in another Dragon Ball series that actually came out right after the end of Dragon Ball Z in the anime only, which is Dragon Ball GT. And while a lot of people disregard GT these days as non-canon, it still has its own continuity, which is connected to the original Dragon Ball Z anime, and is definitely worth discussing the retcon it made in terms of its biggest one, and also what impact this had not only on the story of GT, but as the greater franchise, and of course, how this actually is a retcon, if it really kind of fits into the narrative as well as some of the others I discussed. So let's get into that right now as I break it down in depth. But before I begin, I just wanted to let you all know that I actually have an Instagram page, which is at Laughingstock Media, and a TikTok at LSM Mike, where I post exclusive videos and other things that you could check out over there. So if you're interested in any of this, you can give me a follow on either of these pages, the link to which will be down below in the description. So what exactly is this big retcon that occurred in Dragon Ball GT? Well, it's one that really affected the entire story as a whole. Something that not only impacted the Dragon Ball story, but also set about everything that occurs in Dragon Ball GT, especially with regard to its main character, its biggest villain, and just about everything that leads to the events that transpire throughout those 60-something episodes. So, what exactly does that have to do with? Well, these right here, as you could see, the Black Star Dragon Balls. And the biggest retcon, of course, is that these Dragon Balls even exist to begin with. That there was another set of Dragon Balls that was created by Kami and Piccolo as the Nameless Namekian before he split and got his good self on one half, which is Kami, the bad self or the evil version, the Jungian shadow of himself, as Piccolo Daimao, the Demon King Piccolo, who went on to become Piccolo Jr., or Piccolo as we see in the story. These supremely powerful Dragon Balls, way more powerful than the normal version, that summon a much larger variation of Shenron, the Black Star Shenron Dragon, the red one, and basically everything involving them that's said about the story of Dragon Ball GT. And of course, the reason why this is a retcon is because this was never once mentioned or hinted at ever occurring within the story. Much like at the start of Dragon Ball Z, the anime, and that section of the manga, what ended up happening was that Goku had his origins given to us in terms of retconning and changing that to be a Sun Wukong character, a kind of mythical animal kind of human or some other different being altogether, into becoming an alien, a Saiyan, and learning more about his history and backstory. I know that a lot of people try and say that that isn't a retcon, it's more of a revelation, but again, a retcon doesn't just have to be something that 100% doesn't fit within the narrative itself, but also the greater story and the themes and the narrative intention of Toriyama or the creator at the time. And that's the same case, of course, with Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, the beginning of Dragon Ball Super, where they have that retcon in which, you know, there are another god of destruction, these beings like Beerus, the Hakaishin, and there's 12 different universes. That kind of changes the world as a whole to cater it to the other story. The exact same thing happens here with these Black Star Dragon Balls, which were never present in the original narrative in Toriyama's mind, or even Toei's. These are something created entirely altogether out of universe. However, unlike what occurred in the original story with Dragon Ball, you know, Dragon Ball Z, of course, with Raditz showing up and explaining to Goku his origin, these don't fit in the story anywhere near as well, because there are so many instances in the past where we could have had these Dragon Balls used, and they just never once brought them up. Instead, they went to rely on the Namekian Dragon Balls, and, you know, just think about the different instances where the Dragon Balls were not capable of being used in the early on stages of, like, you know, the Buu Saga, for example, where they were using the Earth Dragon Balls, and they sent it away, and then it was like, oh, wait, we could also use other Dragon Balls. And, of course, the big reason why nobody wants to use these Dragon Balls in universe is because of the fact that when they're utilized, they scatter across the galaxy, and then in turn, they could lead to blowing up the Earth. But again, let's say that somebody found these Dragon Balls on Kami's lookout at any point after Kami and Piccolo were reunited, and they were like, oh, here's some Dragon Balls. We're going to use them to save our friends, or we're going to use them to do this or do that. It might have at least had, Piccolo bringing these things up, or Mr. Popo, somebody just mentioning something to the audience, or, to the different characters in the story, that these other Dragon Balls that could destroy the entire planet if you ever use them exist. And not to mention that, but also, why would they even still exist to begin with? Because not only, number one, can Kami just deactivate the Dragon Balls and make them not work anymore, but additionally, another thing is too, are we really sure that the character of the nameless Namekian is truly the one and the same that he was at the beginning of the original story when he was sent to the Earth by his father Katats when Namek was undergoing that catastrophe? Because the fact that this is not necessarily the same being is what I'm getting at here. Because if we look back at the manga here, for example, and we look at what Kami is saying, when he says that he and Piccolo are right about to unite, that they have no need to explain anything to one another. Their information will become one when they, are united once more. However, when we actually look at the details in universe of the story, because a lot of people just think that Kami and Piccolo just became one again in a different sense than traditional Namekian merging. But is that really the thing that actually happens here? Well, let's take a look at what actually occurred in the manga, which, as you could see here, when they merge together, Piccolo is saying, I will remain as the dominant mind. Got that? And Kami says, that is fine. You are young and have far surpassed me in strength now. It is the obvious choice. I am merely an opportunity to boost your power and give you vast knowledge. You, the foundation, must be the one to touch me. Very well, says Piccolo. The two of them unite or merge together. Again, Piccolo just places his hand on Kami and he's merged into him, very similar to what we saw with Nail. And then we see Piccolo remains the same clothing. He looks exactly the same as he did before. And then Piccolo mentions, I am no longer Kami-sama or Piccolo. I am a Namekian who has forgotten even his true name. So with regard to this, of course, we do know that Piccolo is not truly the same being as he was before any more than he is truly the same being before he merged with Nail. But with that being said, did he become physically the same being? Not to mention that this Piccolo is not Piccolo Daimao. He is not the exact same being. He's the reincarnation of him, because Piccolo Daimao was able to circumvent the cycle of reincarnation by creating a new sun with his self within it. But with that being said, is he really even capable of becoming the true original nameless Namekian in the same sense that the Piccolo Daimao was? So there's a lot of those questions that come up when we're discussing the existence of the Black Star Dragon Balls, because the fact that if any of those things is an answer which is no, that doesn't really make any sense whatsoever for these Black Star Dragon Balls to be active now or ever active again after what occurred with the nameless Namekian. Not to mention, again, at any point when Kami's explaining how he created the Dragon Balls or why would he never once bring up that, oh yeah, by the way, I created some other Dragon Balls that could destroy the entire planet, and you're going to have to go on a magical adventure across the galaxy to stop them from existing. It seems like something that would have come up, at any point before this. And the impact of these Dragon Balls, the impact of this retcon is so significant, it causes everything in the story, because at the very beginning of Dragon Ball GT, Pilaf and the gang show up on Kami's palace. They go here and they find the Black Star Dragon Balls. They summon Super Shenron. Goku shows up to thwart their plans, and they say that they wish that Goku was a kid again so they could easily beat him, which obviously they forgot what happened in the past because he beat them easily as a kid. And Goku's turned to a kid. The balls scatter across the galaxy. This leads to our characters going on their adventure throughout, trying to rekindle Dragon Ball, the original, in a space environment, which didn't really work out too well for most people. And then as a result, they found Baby along the way. They had everything come to the planet, which caused it to be destroyed. And so many other things occurred along the course of the story, largely because of the fact that Pilaf made this wish, which is because these Dragon Balls existed, which itself was a retcon. So that is the biggest retcon in Dragon Ball GT, the existence of the Black Star Dragon Balls, something which has become a big part of Dragon Ball iconography over the years, especially for people who are fans of Dragon Ball GT. And like I've said before, so many people kind of disregard GT as that non-canon story, so on and so forth, but Toriyama did actually have influence on GT. He did a lot of the designs of the characters, including Vegeta with the mustache. He didn't have the rest of this though. And then of course, a lot of little ideas came from him, and his influence is definitely still felt on the story, just like you could say for Dragon Ball Super. Maybe not as involved, but nonetheless, people have their own canons. Dragon Ball is oftentimes it's choose your own adventure, and GT is certainly canon to itself. So if you want to make that argument in the comments when people are making that comment inevitably, like Thanos, that GT isn't canon, I don't care about retcons, well, go ahead and make that. But with that being said, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.